Yes, the defense still needs to get healthier, but more importantly, I think they just need to settle in during this bye week.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're going to start with all of that in just a second. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On SMU, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. I'm Grayson Singleton, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if the bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Coming up on the show today, I go through the message boards through On the Pony Express, the On3 site covering SMU, and I found something very interesting in those message boards this morning. So we're going to talk about that and how it relates to defensive coordinator Scott Symons. Sneak peek, it's pretty asinine, but we'll also give the bye week grades. What grade would I give all the position groups at the bye week? We're a third of the way through the season, so we're going to do this now. We'll do it after another 4 games, and we'll do it at the end of the regular season. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Again, I'm Grayson Singleton. Glad you're with me. Let's go ahead and get started with this. During this bye week, yesterday we talked about how it's a great reset and a great healing week for Kevin Jennings. The same applies to the defense. But instead of it being a reset for the defense, I think it's time for the defense to get set and get settled in to the roles that they're playing. And look, it is no secret that SMU is replacing a ton. Kobe Wilson, Ahmad Walker, your top 2 tacklers from last year are gone. You know, your cornerback room, which already wasn't that great, got even more depleted. You lost 15 sacks from a year ago. That is now either in the NFL currently or was in an NFL training camp. So you lost a lot defensively. So there already was going to be some growing pains in that area. I think also with the reshuffling of everything on the back end, you know, things get just put into a little bit of flux. Now, do I think they made those changes on the back end with nobody having experimented at them, maybe during fall camp or sometime during the offseason? Maybe they did. I'm going to believe that there was at least some sort of toying with this before. But ultimately, the problems that plague the defense, yes, they look a step slow sometimes. Yes, they look like they can, get tired late in games, and that allows teams to either come back or pull away. And then there's just the problem with we can't just tackle people. Now, I don't know about you, but I refuse to believe that a bunch of dudes who got all the way to the P4 level. Remember, this isn't the remnant of a team that was in the American 2 years ago. These are dudes that have been deemed to be P4 talented dudes. I just don't believe that they just all of a sudden forgot how to tackle. I want to believe that maybe the pass defense will not get any better. Maybe it will be a bottom third of the ACC pass defense. Maybe it will. But when it comes to the tackling, I think this is more of a one-time illness than a long-term sickness, right? I believe that can get better. And I think over the bye week, in terms of just settling in and getting more comfortable in the spaces that you're around. Remember, they're playing a lot of young guys. They've switched young guys out of positions. They've got guys in and out of the lineup, Barker, Kilgore, right? If you can just settle in, I think something as fundamental as tackling people, I think gets corrected. Now, do you all of a sudden become a grade A tackling team? Maybe not. But it doesn't look as bad as it's looked in some of these games, particularly the ones that you've lost. So when I say bye week goal number 2 is just get settled in, right? Jalen Milner-Jones started out at nickel, moved to free safety. You've got a new starting corner. Smoke Robertson is in there at corner now. Ahmad Moses has moved down from free safety to nickel. Justin Medlock Brandon Maizano, they've got an extended run that probably even they thought they weren't going to get because of the injuries to Barker and Kilgore. You've had rotations trying to be figured out at defensive tackle. You've had guys in and out of the lineup at defensive end. Like, there's a lot of moving parts on this defense. And over the course of bye weeks, yes, you want to get healthy. Yes, you will get healthier. But you also just want to take some time, review the film, and just get in a better mindset of where you are playing in a particular scheme. And I think that will bode well for SMU. Again, do I think they're going to be some top flight defense like they were a season ago? No, I don't think that. I think we're past that. I think the secondary just has so much work that needs to be done for that to happen. And the front seven, while it is good when it's healthy, isn't dominant enough to offset it. But I do think they could end up being a middle of the pack defense. You just got to figure some stuff out. And bye weeks are also a good time for reflection and resetting, right? Deuce Harmon, I think, is a dude that can play. Again, not a top of the league type corner, but a dude that can play. In terms of intercepting the ball, nobody's really had a great idea of how to do that yet. Again, take a step back, reset, reflect. And there's a lot of good that can come out of a bye week. But ultimately, the fundamental things, because everything starts with the fundamentals. Ultimately, I think the fundamental things can be the most easily corrected when it comes to, reset, get a little bit healthier, take a little bit of time off, and then regroup and get back to work. There's going to be a new fire lit under this team once conference play starts. I just think that's natural for everybody. You get through the non-con. Obviously, you're playing hard. You're not taking any non-con games off. I'm not saying that. But everybody knows when conference play starts, there's a new heightened level of energy. There's a new heightened level of focus. And sometimes that comes with an even more heightened attention to detail, which, by the way, attention to detail is something that this team could use a little bit more of. You talk about all the penalties, the turnovers, some of the sloppiness. That's details. That's details. And some of that just comes along with now our season really means more. And again, not accusing anybody of taking plays off, underestimating opponents, none of that. But you did come straight out of the gate, and some things were sloppy, some of them fundamental. So let's correct them in the bye week. And when the fundamentals are off and now you're rotating guys in and they're getting more run than would have been reasonably expected, you've changed up people's positions. When you take all of those ingredients together, some things make a little bit of sense. Now, am I excusing away the poor tackling? No. Am I excusing the way that SMU is just horrid against the pass? No, I'm not excusing it away. What I am saying is that over a bye week, as you continue to get settled in to your new positions, to your new roles, things can improve. So if you missed us yesterday, my bye week goal number one was just get Kevin Jennings healthy. That ankle looks weird right now. That's a weird situation, a testy situation with that ankle. Just get it right. And then bye week goal number two here today is let's get everybody settled in defensively. Get Jada Milner-Jones another week to review film and own the craft of being a free safety. Ahmad Moses hasn't been perfect at nickel. He's been good, but he hasn't been perfect. Another new corner opposite Deuce Harmon. Even Deuce Harmon could use a reset himself too. And the front six, get them rested. Get them a good reset. Just get settled into everything. And maybe some of the fundamental things that ail SMU get corrected. And once the fundamental things get corrected, who knows what else could get a little bit better. Again, not excusing anything away, but there could be better to come on the other side of this once you start ACC play. All right. Good thing to get started with that. Speaking of the defense, coming up next, I read the message boards sometimes, and there was some interesting takes on Scott Symons. We'll talk about it on the other side. Keep it here, Locked On SMU. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. And this episode, and we at Locked On SMU are brought to you by Mazda. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but monotonous, from smooth handling to all the intuitive controls. And you can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. It's great. And like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible just becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. We're also brought to you today by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in just minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally just feel in control of your money. And you never have to touch a spreadsheet. And you can identify points of where you thought you were saving, but you're not even saving as much as you thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from your past jobs. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, welcome back to the show. I'm Grayson Singleton. And remember, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube. And for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcast, thank y'all so much for being a part of the SMU community and for making us your first listen every single day. We really do appreciate it. Okay, so I go on the message boards every once in a while, and Billy Embody, Dean Rowski, and the crew over there on the Pony Express do an excellent job. But I was on the message boards earlier today, and I saw a reaction, and it looks like a very visceral one from Saturday. And I call out the people that comment on the YouTubes. I'm going to leave this person anonymous. But here's what this particular person had to say. Quote, I have never seen a more pitiful third down defense than what I laid my eyes on today. That was a complete bunch of words that I'm not going to say. Across any level of football, that was the worst defensive performance I've seen on third down. The fact that we extended him, being Scott Symons, recently might be the reason for our downfall. He is downright awful, and I'd love to hear anything he has to say. He probably doesn't have much to say, though. The header on that thread was Scott Symons needs to resign. People, what are we doing? And I hope this does not represent a majority of you, because by no means does Scott Symons need to resign. By no means does Scott Symons need to be removed from his job, okay? And I know we live in a world of what have you done for me lately? Recency bias rules. I understand that. I am part of it. I am culpable of it, just like all of us. All of us are. But let me remind you something about Scott Symons. In 2024, SMU was the number one defense in the ACC. Against the run, SMU was almost 10 yards per game better against stopping the run than anybody in the conference. In terms of scoring defense in 2024, guess who was number one? You bet it was the SMU Mustangs. Now, where was SMU against the pass, you might add? They were 7th in the conference. So middle of the pack against the pass, and that's where they were at worst. Now, they didn't take the ball away a whole lot, but you couldn't really move the ball against them. In 2023, the final season in which SMU was in the American, SMU was the number one ranked team in total defense by a margin of 37 yards per game. That is bananas in terms of the gap between 1 and 2. How many passing yards did they give up? I don't know, 182. In modern college football, I don't care where you're playing. You give up 182 yards passing per game, you're doing something right. By the way, that was 30 yards better than number 2. Against the run, SMU was the second best against the run in the American. And in terms of scoring defense, SMU was the only defense in the American in 2023 to allow less than 20 points per game. So to say that this year, Scott Symons' defense erases all that body of work, which, by the way, isn't that long ago, is completely nuts. It's nuts at the most generous. It's asinine at the worst to say that Scott Symons shouldn't be no longer the defensive coordinator for SMU. And by the way, let me pitch this to all of you too. If you thought that a defense that was that good last year lost 15 sacks in production, lost each of its top 2 tacklers, which totaled to be just under 300 between Wilson and between Ahmad Wilson and Ahmad Walker and Kobe Wilson. Sorry, got them mixed up. If you thought losing that and then losing guys on the back end, where that clearly was your conspicuous weakness, if you lose all of that and you don't bring any difference makers in the transfer portal, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, we talked about this during the summertime. SMU's defense should still be good, but it should not be as dominant as it was a season ago. And also keep this in mind, this wasn't a defense last year that took the ball away a whole heck of a lot. So there was certainly room for some sort of a drop-off. Now, if you want to say, well, the guys aren't tackled or the guys are being put in the best situations, okay, fine. I can hear that. There's certainly merit to that argument. But the dudes can't tackle. Tackling seems to be a really big issue here right now for SMU. That ain't on the defensive coordinator. It really is not. Also, keep in mind the fact that the 2 inside linebackers have not really played since week 1. And you went up against 2 of the better quarterbacks in the entire country without them. Those are your leaders and your signal callers. Now, does Scott Symons' secondary, especially because he's the safeties coach too, does that look suspect? Yes. Can you trace that back to Scott Symons? Yes, you can. However, you're going to tell me that he was not involved with reshuffling the depth chart and moving people around trying to make this better? No. If there would be a better argument for, hey, Scott Symons should be more under the microscope if he's not trying and toying around with different things. But that's just not the case right now. He is trying to get this better. By the way, we are coming out of a non-con. So a lot of the numbers are going to lie here. And yes, SMU needs to be a lot better. I know this is a convenient time to make that argument because SMU right now, in terms of total defense, is next to last in the ACC. Only Syracuse has been worse in terms of total yards per game allowed. But SMU is still securely in the top half against the run. They stopped the run. In terms of scoring, they haven't been fantastic. But keep this in mind too. This whole thing will return to the median once we get into conference play. Because remember, we've only played, and this goes for everybody too, 2 of your games have been against far inferior opponents. And what has SMU's defense done against those far inferior opponents? Aside from being put in, a really tough spot by the offense against Missouri State, they've looked okay. They really have. They got cut up by elite quarterbacks, but again, without your signal callers. So I don't think, basically what I'm saying here is that I don't think the non-con is a perfect referendum on Scott Symons. But I think if you did not expect a drop-off, given what you lost last season, that's on you. That is on you. I know they returned Isaiah Wokobia and Ahmad Moses and Cam Robertson and Isaiah Smith were expected to take leaps, and they've been, decent. But sometimes you lose certain things, and replacing it isn't just a smooth path. and things just continue to go how they've been. Like, this isn't Alabama, okay? So, like, there's going to be some drop-off. But the ultimate telltale and the ultimate closing of the book on this defense and Scott Symons' unit in 2025 is nowhere close to being written. That's why I started off the show talking about how you can reset and get settled in during the bye week. So there is still a lot of football left to be played. There are 8 conference games that are to be played against some good offenses. They have time to improve, and they've got time to show it. They have all the time in the world. Like, this is not time to panic. And to say that anybody other than Scott Symons should be the defensive coordinator at SMU, given his body of work leading up to this point, and given that we are only a third of the way through the season, I think is nuts. I really do. This was a dude that was voted as the 7th best defensive coordinator coming into the season by On3. And On3 has very knowledgeable people that are doing these lists and doing these articles. Very knowledgeable people about the world of college football. So no, it is way, way, way too premature. Way too premature to be saying that there should be somebody other than Scott Symons as defensive coordinator of SMU. Whew, that was good. That was one of my better rants on this show. Coming up next, let's hand out some grades. Who's performed well, who hasn't performed well to this point in the SMU season. We'll do that to close up the show on the other side here on Locked On SMU. Time to talk about FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can still bet just $5, and if the bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I've told you guys what I love about FanDuel. I love that you can jump in as live action is unfolding. I love the same game parlays, and you know my favorite is those player props, even though you win a lot, and I get in trouble a little bit with them, but you can make some serious coin with them. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add just a little more energy to your Sundays. I know y'all love to watch football, so why not make it even more fun by putting some money on the line with FanDuel, especially with all the ways that you can do it. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Professor Singleton in the house. Let's hand out some grades a third of the way through the season. Now, some of these are going to be unit-based. Some of these are going to be based on players. So let's go ahead and run through it. Let's start with the offense as a whole. I give them a B grade. They are capable of scoring. They have had guys step up in terms of injury. I still don't really know what's going on with the tight end situation. They haven't been used, I think, as much as they could have, nor as much as I expected them to. The run blocking has been excellent. The running game has been A+, but the pass blocking has been a little suspect at times. But this group gets a boost in their grade from a B- to a B because of how guys have stepped up in light of injuries and the fact that the running game is just so strong. What do I need to see more from? Pass blocking has to get better, and they just need to stop shooting themselves in the foot, particularly as it comes to penalties. So I think a B grade here is a pretty appropriate one. How about the transfer running backs? That I like this one. The transfer running backs, Chris Johnson Jr. and TJ Harden, A+. They have been an A+, and they have given a jolt of energy to this team that we just didn't know if it was going to have with Brashard Smith departing. And by the way, because of how useful they both have been, obviously TJ Harden has emerged as RB1, but because of how useful and how different they are, but they still have awesome skill sets, you don't have to have one of them touch the ball 300 times this season. Neither of them are going to even come close to approaching that. So that's a good thing too. But with the way that TJ Harden has been running the ball, just under 5 yards a carry, Chris Johnson Jr. doing the same, they can keep the chains moving, keep the offense balanced and two-dimensional. I love what they have brought. A+ to those guys. Romello Brinson, I think, also on the offensive side of the ball, B plus for him. He's been a playmaker. He has bailed Kevin Jennings out of an interception. He's a deep threat. He's a reliable threat in the intermediate. But he's just had a bunch of moments where it's just like, bro, what the hell are you doing? You know, the fumble when you're just trying to move the ball from one hand to the other. You've got the couple unsportsmanlike penalties, even though those are kind of a bunch of bull crap, but you got to know the rules. So there are a couple of things where you left scratching your head, but Romello Brinson, I think, has been excellent. B plus, A minus territory is where I would go for him. Lastly, on the offense, Kevin Jennings. Kevin Jennings, I think, is a complicated one because you look at the raw numbers and you're like, well, this is a B minus C quarterback, but then you got to watch the games. I am impressed with how he has developed a chemistry with a young Jalen Cooper, a freshman who was thrust into action when Jordan Hudson went down. I'm impressed with his ability to throw the outbreaking routes. He can throw to the sideline and not miss inside and to get picked off. But the lack of him in the running game to me is very strange. And I do think that he bails the pocket too soon and sometimes holds the ball too long as well. So all that put together, I love how he put on the cape and tried to lead SMU back. He still is a really good quarterback. All that combined, Kevin Jennings gets a B plus from me. I would like to see him take better care of the football, and I would like to see him sometimes stay in the pocket just a little bit longer. But ultimately, the main thing that I really want to see as we go on through the last 2/3 of the season is, can they use his legs to add another layer and dimension to this offense? Let's go to the defensive side. And I'm going to go to the front six because we can't really say front seven anymore because we play with 5 DBs as a base defense now. Front six gets an A minus. They get an A minus from me. In your 2 games against teams that you are far superior than, do not get moved is what I'm looking at. And they didn't get moved. They have been excellent against the run. They are only allowing 114 yards on the ground per game. I can take that. I can take that, especially given the way that the games against Baylor and TCU sort of went down. Now, would you have liked better? Yes, you would have. But also, they're getting pressure on the quarterback too. And they're moving quarterbacks around. Sometimes they're bringing them down, sometimes not. I think that the battle of attrition in those Baylor and TCU games, I don't think you can put that totally on them because the offense just didn't keep the ball for long enough time. So I think the front six, you guys get an A minus. There's still a little bit more that you want to see, but they've been good so far. And I'm also adjusting that too for the fact that Kilgore and Barker haven't been in there as well. The safety duo of Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wachovia, they get a B plus. We've got 3 interceptions right now between the two. You have 3 interceptions, a sack, and a touchdown from those two. Now they get a B plus because why? At spots, the tackling has been a little bit suspect between those two. They have missed tackles. However, they have been the bookends of this defense. They have been one of the more consistent things that have happened. Isaiah Wachovia is leading the team in tackles this year. Like we cannot overstate that enough. Is that one of your safeties is leading the team in tackles, and Ahmad Moses is right up there with him. Ahmad Moses is now 3rd on the team in tackles behind Brandon Booker, one of the linebackers that has been thrust into even more action. So they get a B plus. Cornerback room, this is going to be my worst grade, and you guys probably expected that. They get a D. They get a D. And that's, again, to circle back to the start of the show, maybe you just settle in a little bit more as the bye week comes and goes and as you get in and deeper into ACC play. But I got to see more. You got to see more. I could argue that given the grades that I gave out, if the pass defense improves, SMU's a better team. The pass defense, I think, is holding this team back. Hence why I made that grade stand out like I made it. Ultimately, there's a lot of things that need to get better. Got to get more discipline, got to get more buttoned up and less sloppy. But if that pass defense comes along, SMU will stay in and possibly win more ball games than we otherwise think on today, September the 24th. That'll do it for a Locked On SMU. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always and for making us your first listen of the day. And remember, keep an eye out because tomorrow it's college football kickoff time on Fire TV as Locked On presents College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview, hosted by Drake Toll, Gary Patterson, and Jesse Holly, and featuring a litany of our Locked On local experts. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. We will talk to you tomorrow here on Locked On SMU. Take it easy, everybody.